tuning in to the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing after-shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey AfterBuzzers, and welcome to the third and final after show for HBO's The Jinx. Tonight we're recapping episode 5, Family Values, and episode 6, The Second Interview. And before we dive into all that, I want to make sure you guys are subscribed to us on YouTube, youtube.com/AfterBuzzTV. You can also find all the podcasts on iTunes and SoundCloud as well, so be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, you name it. And also tweet us. We want to know what you guys think of the show, the finale, everything. I'm Lauren Salaun, and you can find me on Twitter at Lauren Salaun. I'm joined tonight by Stef Z and Bobby DeMuro. How you guys doing tonight?
We're doing good.
Good. Where can everyone find you on Twitter?
You guys can tweet me at I am Stef Z with an F.
With an F. I'm at Bobby DeMuro.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right. So let's dive into it. Family Values, episode 5. There's not a whole lot of meat we want to talk about in this episode because, as everyone knows, the real juicy stuff comes in the finale. But I think a few of the interesting things were, initially we focus a lot on Robert's family and how he was pretty much alienated completely from his family. And it was very bizarre, but at the same time understandable, I think, for a family that's that prominent in the business world and public eye to kind of cast somebody aside like that who's been kind of causing trouble and would be bad for the image. So I thought that was just very bizarre almost how he was like he didn't exist.
The thing that stood out to me about that was I would think that the family would have more trouble growing. Like I would feel like the weight of him being who he was and all the controversy around him would have played more. It seems like it didn't play at all. As they say that they, had they got involved with the Freedom Tower, they got involved with this, they got involved with that. Those seem to me like big public events. So right, I was a little bit like, wow, I would feel like the family would suffer a little bit more than it appeared to. That was kind of the only thing that stood out.
And they said even, the organization wasn't really affected by his situation.
Well, it's tough because they're real estate. They're not like selling services to people, so it's not like they own a donut shop. You can't boycott them. It's the same argument you make with Donald Trump. Like, he can say whatever he wants because he's not in business for common people. He's doing deals. And I think this is kind of the same way with this family. It's like they can get the Freedom Tower because they're so well connected. It didn't have anything to do with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
This wasn't us being like, hey, we're not going to shop at these people's business. We can't buy what they're selling anyways. So...
And I think Jarecki says in that episode, he's like, well, I think it makes so much more sense and it gives you an idea of why he wants to be in our film and in this show so much, because he's totally cast aside from his family and not recognized in any way, and was supposed, with how families go and heirs of, businesses, he was supposed to be kind of running the show, if the oldest gets handed the business, and he's not. So it does kind of explain a lot for maybe why his motives for doing that. Because I know last week, Bobby, you were saying he's a very smart guy who got not tricked necessarily, but a very smart guy who did a stupid thing by pretty much agreeing to do all these interviews.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and then we move on to them talking to Ed Wright, who was a private detective back when Kathy went missing, and they go through all his original documents, and we see a lot of discrepancies with Bob's story again, with the doorman not seeing Kathy go up, and just very interesting to see the kind of power that the Durst family had back then, because back when this was happening, when Kathy went missing, Bob was still part of the family and was still involved in the organization, and to see how they went and hired this private detective and kept all that information. Everything that he found, they held on to and didn't turn it into the police, which makes the situation even fishier,
Right.
I think. You know,
No,
I
I
think
agree.
we talked a little bit about how potentially his family could have helped with covering something up, you know, and that, I mean, just spikes my suspicions about it.
When you've got money and influence and power and connections, you can make a lot of stuff go away. You know?
Yep, exactly. And so the episode 5 kind of ends with Kathy's case starting, you know, discussion of Kathy's case to be reopened. And we see Deborah, Bob's current wife, again, and so right after Bob found out that Kathy's case was going to get reopened, he and Deborah got married, pretty much. So the speculation is that he did that to get spousal privilege invoked, so that anything she might know about what was going on or what happened to Kathy ends up being protected, so that she can't testify against him because they're married, which is a smart move on his part, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like she definitely knows. Like, if there's
totally.
one person that knows, I feel like it's her. Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, and she's very sharp, I think, too, because when you hear those recordings of them of her and Bob talking, and he'll say he was going to do something. I think when he's talking about going to Douglas's house, and he was, you know, thinking of maybe doing something he shouldn't be, and she says, "Don't say what you were thinking about. I know what you're talking about. Don't say it on the phone." You know, she's very sharp when it comes to kind of the legal ins and outs of things, and kind of helping to protect him.
Yeah.
Essentially. So.
Which she might have been coached.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
For that stuff.
Definitely. So we close on Susan's son, or stepson, Sarah, finding this letter in Susan's things that's from Bob Durst, and the envelope matches, like, almost to a T the cadaver note, you know, all the way down to the misspelling of Beverly, all of it. The letters, you know, look completely the same, and so that leads us into episode 6, and the finale, and the whole episode is really, you know, focusing on that letter, and they bring it to a handwriting specialist who essentially concludes that, yeah, there's pretty much no way around it. This is the same letter.
What baffles me about that is, I would think, and clearly this isn't the case, so I don't know if you guys at all thought this, I would think that Jarecki he was, like, withholding evidence. Like, is that legal, what he did? Like, putting the letter in a safety deposit box and waiting to give it to the police? I mean, kind of what he was saying is that if he gives it to the police, they're going to then do all these things, and then they're going to interview him, and he thinks that he would get a more genuine interview out of him and a more genuine answer in questioning him about this letter. So it seems like that wouldn't be allowed.
I agree. I don't know. It seems like it wouldn't, and he does say, you know, well, this is an old case. It's not like us holding on to this for a month or something is really going to change anything that's going on right now, and it wasn't. It's not like that case was still being investigated, you know?
Yeah,
so
it just seemed weird. It seemed like if there's a missing person, or there's some law that's broken and you witness something that could figure out why something happened, I feel like it's just like a known that you're kind of obligated to tell the police.
Right, I would think so too. So I don't know.
Or he could argue that Sarah had this letter and he took it from him and put him in the safety deposit box, and it was safe there, and you knew it was there, and I will show it to you there, and no one will touch it.
Right.
It's safer than where it was with some random guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I also don't know, what was the status of Susan's case right when he had the letter? Was it cold? Was it active?
I don't know.
Well, because if you think about it, what happens if, you know, we see that there's a struggle to get him to come back in to do this interview, and what happens if within that waiting period that they, you know, what happens if he escaped again?
Yeah, or if he did something.
And they didn't turn it to the police, and the police didn't know where to find him. Couldn't they be like an accessory or whatever? I mean, maybe not an accessory, maybe that's dramatic.
Right,
but
if he
you know
caught
what I mean?
wind.
Like, what if he got away? Because it seemed like he was trying to figure out,
That was really weird, whole Spain part.
Yeah, so I don't know. I was just watching it, and I was almost distracted by that thought, that what happens if he would have fled or got away or went somewhere, and then Jarecki, would he have told the police after that? Well, we had this piece of evidence, because then the police would be like, why didn't you tell us? We could have went and got him, and we have this piece of evidence. You let this guy get away.
Right.
I feel like that's a lot to take on for a film. it made it awesome, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it's a lot to take on as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I have no idea what the rules with that would be.
I would say it depends, too, on maybe the difference between a suspect and a person of interest and just somebody they're kind of want to maybe talk to. And if the police had named Bob Durst a suspect outright, I think Jarecki probably that day would have been like, okay, I have something you need to see. This is official now. But maybe if he's just a person that knew Susan and the police weren't outwardly publicly saying, hey, public, help us with Bob Durst information or whatever it would be.
Right, because I don't think he was like the top suspect.
And Jarecki can then live in that gray area and say, oh, you never named him publicly as a suspect. We could have given this to you. We didn't know. You know.
And even in that, though, Jarecki, from his previous movie that he made, kind of sits in the he's guilty place. Yeah. So it was a powerful choice. I loved the choice because it gave us what we got. But it was a sticky choice.
Yeah. Yeah. God, I would be so curious to see if that's something you could get in trouble for, because he's not part of the investigation, so withholding evidence isn't necessarily, I wouldn't think would be relevant. But
I guess technically they don't know it's evidence is the other thing, the other gray area. It's not like he took evidence or stolen property or something like that. You know, it's he's like, well, this could be a tip of interest, but it could just be a guy writing a letter. I don't know. You guys are the cops. I'll give it to you when I give it. You know, the cops, I think, kind of function on tips from the public, which is like, if you can give us tips, that's great, but I don't know that they would go so far as to arrest a member of the public or whatever the case is for not giving a tip. You know, if the cops said, we're looking for a letter, maybe Jarecki would have had to be like, okay, come over, I have something for you.
I just wonder, I'm sure there had to be an agreement and some sort of contract, so to speak, between Jarecki and the police of what he's finding, of what, you know, it's almost like probably client privilege of his conversations. Like, he would never have to testify against. I mean, that would be another crazy thing if for some reason this leads to this and they call Jarecki to testify because he's the one that got this interview.
I think they absolutely would call him. 100%.
See, I don't think they probably.
There's no filmmaker privilege. You know what I'm saying? It's not like
but I feel like the defense could then use that almost against him. We saw his smart lawyers saying, you created this movie to frame me. You set me up to say those things. You know, I feel like that's a really.
I think the defense would call him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the defense would call him and say, you sold the narrative film, then you sold the documentary film. How has this benefited your career? What is your personal vendetta against Durst? I don't think Jarecki has one, but you could make that argument if you're from the defense or just see that reasonable doubt. Yeah, I think the defense could absolutely call him and probably should.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Wow. And I love it. I love that it's still kind of playing out. It's like, real. The Jinx is over, but the Robert Durst story is very much not over. So that's exciting.
And I thought it was also interesting that when they find this envelope, you know, Jarecki has a lot of kind of internal turmoil over what he's going to do about it, because he does say, you know, I've established an emotional connection with this guy and I like him kind of, you know, and he trusts me, and feeling kind of, you know, how difficult that would be for himself to do that to Bob, but then how cold it would feel from Bob's perspective to kind of be like, you know, thrown under the bus in a sense that way.
Not even that. It took you see how an amazing reporter that Jarecki is and filmmaker, that he was able to keep that. You know what I mean? It's not like you're keeping in secret, like, you know, your friend's like cheating on somebody or whatever. Like, you just pretty much found out that this guy's a murderer. And you have to keep that even keel and go talk to him like you've been talking to him before, when you kind of didn't think he was completely guilty. You knew he probably wasn't 100% clean, but you wanted to believe him. Now you know, and you have to keep that energy. And it doesn't really show. There was a couple points where I was watching and I was like, he might not have done that previously. But for the most part, he pretty much did keep it the same. And I don't think at all Bob Durst felt that.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think we even see that a little bit with Jarecki having this realization of like, well, gosh, I've never been afraid of him up until this point, and now I'm a little unsure about things, you know, and his nervousness. And I think with the, you know, they're creating this TV show and this documentary, I think they did a very good job of kind of putting Jarecki into the finale in this way and like showing that kind of human perspective of it, you know, because he's said he's after discovering the truth and finding out the truth of the situation, but of course he's also wanting to make a documentary about this.
Right.
And so I thought I just appreciated that a lot from their perspective of making the series that way and putting his perspective in it.
Yeah, I appreciated that they showed us too how they kind of role played the situations to prepare him for the conversations. What if he said this? What if he said this? You know, do I just call him out and say, I feel you did it? Like, I really enjoyed watching that thought process.
Right, the way that they would have to play it so he couldn't back out of a corner, essentially. That was very interesting, too.
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical of Jarecki, though, because he took a personal liking to Bob Durst. And if he talks out of one side of his mouth and says, I want to get the truth, if you want to get the objective truth, or as best as you can get close to it, you can't then be subjective with your subjects. And he got, you know, part of this is the Bob Durst gift that you can make people trust you when you're like that, and that's why he's in the position he's in, because these women trusted him, and maybe Morris Black trusted him to a certain extent, whatever happened there. But Jarecki should know better. And I know he's not a journalist. He would call himself a filmmaker, and that's an important distinction between filmmaker and journalist. But when you're dealing with a real-world situation like this, you have to remove yourself enough, you know, and you can't like Bob Durst. You can say he's likable, but I think Jarecki goes the next level. Nothing weird and inappropriate, but just a step too far to be like, I found myself liking him, or I enjoyed his company, or whatever you want to call it. You can't do that.
I know, but on the other hand, if you're wanting to have such an intimate interview with somebody and try and find out all these things about what makes them tick and all these like terrible situations that have gone on in their life, whether or not they've caused them themselves or not, you know, there is a large level of empathy and kind of connection that you do have to make. You know, it'd be very difficult, I think, to get there if you just hated the person that you're sitting across the table.
I'm not saying you hate him. I just say you emotionally remove yourself.
Right, yeah. Right. Like you have to, it's almost like you're acting. It's like you have to be able to make that connection and make that person trust you so that they'll tell you the juice. But after you walk out of the room, you have to be like, that was just business.
Oh, yeah. Very challenging.
And I think you're skeptical of everybody. Personally, you should say Bob Durst is the killer. But you should also say these cops you just interviewed, they don't know what they're talking about. I think they got the wrong guy. I think you have to be skeptical of everybody to keep it safe. I think he's just a little too trusting early on of Bob, and I think that's why episode 6 is so compelling, because his trust is shattered. You know, episode 6 is so compelling because he kind of starts going down a dangerous road in 1 through 5, and he's a little too trusting. And then 6 comes and real world hits, and you're like,
he's like, dang, I was kind of liking him, and now I'm realizing, what was I thinking?
Exactly.
Oh, man. Yeah, it was very good. I like that, you know, flipping the camera on him a bit more. And we see, I thought it was peculiar, I guess, with Bob's whole Spain thing. You know, him saying that, telling the filmmakers he's in Spain, Barcelona or Madrid, you know, and then telling Sarah, you know, don't tell them that I'm in LA, actually. You know, I don't think I want to go through with this. And that was his whole Spain talk just trying to get out of doing the second interview at all?
I think so. I think it was to get out of it, and I think it was just to make him look busy, to make him look important, to make him look not. I mean, if they say he's in L.A., it's why is he in L.A.? What's he doing there? Someone was killed there. If he's in New York, you know, I feel like it was just a random place that was safe.
Yeah,
but
it seemed so weird.
Bizarre.
Yeah,
like picturing him in Barcelona or Madrid is like, But
yeah, it was such an intricate, well, not that intricate of a lie, but such a random lie to tell instead of just like, oh, I don't feel like it. But then again, I feel like he's a very complex person who probably is used to lying a lot. In a sense. I mean, I doubt his character a lot.
No, you do, and you have to doubt it after that, and that establishes the fact that he lies. And we all lie about stuff on different levels, but like when you're in this situation and then you establish yourself objectively to be a liar, you really have to start questioning stuff like that.
Well, it's funny. I think that, you know, he established himself as a liar episode 1 or episode 2 when we find out that he told the cops that he went to have coffee with his neighbor and this and that. And he's like, well, if I wouldn't have said that, you guys would have thought I did it. I needed to, if I say that, then the police go away. But it's funny because as we watch, even though we see and he expresses and he tells us that he lies, we're still kind of like, we don't think he's lying again until he tells us, or it's proven wrong again.
Right.
You almost believe the things that he's saying until they're not true, rather than, or at least for me, I believed what he was saying until I heard it was not true, rather than knowing from the beginning he tells lies and looking at everything as a lie until it's true.
Right. Oh, I'm right there with you. I mean, there have been several times, and even when he says, like, oh, well, nobody tells the whole truth.
Yeah.
No one tells the whole truth, maybe parts of it. And when he's coaching himself with, like, I did not intentionally lie. I did not intentionally mislead you, down some path. And I, myself as well, find myself believing him or kind of empathizing with him to a certain extent and feeling sorry for him, and then being like, wait, I also believe that he probably did all these awful things. So, tricky guy. So Bob ends up getting arrested for breaking the order of protection against Douglas, his brother, and then the tables kind of turn again, because Jarecki had been trying to get him to do the second interview that he said that he wanted to do, and he's been backing out. But now with this arrest, his lawyers ask Jarecki to provide the footage from when they were filming in Times Square, like near Douglas's place, to kind of get Bob off the hook for that whole issue. That would drop the charges, all that. And so Jarecki smartly, obviously, offers to trade the footage for the second interview, which who knows if he hadn't done that, if Bob ever would have agreed to that second interview.
I think he eventually would have.
I think so too.
He
likes to.
I didn't read it that way, and maybe I missed that, but I read it that because I was actually took note that when Jarecki called him to say about the film, he was like, yes, I'll give it to you. And he said, just what you need so that it doesn't show what my film's doing. And then it was a separate phone call when Bob called him and said, I'm ready to be filmed if you're still interested.
Yeah.
So I don't think I think subconsciously he used it as the leverage, but it wasn't like, I'm only giving you the footage if you do my interview.
Right. But Jarecki even said, now we've got all this leverage to be able to make sure we get him back in here.
Yeah.
So Bob probably wasn't that against doing the follow-up, but that was an extra little nudge to get him to do it.
Jarecki was smart enough to know if I give him what he wants, he'll come to me rather than him feeling pressured, because then he might think that I have something.
Right, exactly.
So lots of smart choices by Jarecki.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, because as we've said, Bob is, I think, a very intelligent person, and comes off very unassuming. I think when you watch him in these interviews, seems like a pretty meek, gentle, and like shy guy, but I think really is a very smart and manipulative guy, and so Jarecki definitely played it smart and played it the right way to convince him to come back in there.
Yeah.
I think. And so then we get Bob back in for the second interview, and Jarecki's going through all the stuff he's got, so the cadaver note, like the writing and all that, and then he's got the letter to Susan that Sarah found. So he's saying, okay, so here's this letter, did you write this? And Bob doesn't. Which, when I'm watching this, when Bob doesn't necessarily remember writing that letter, I'm wondering, okay, is he that smart to be denying that he wrote that, or does he just not remember at all? What do you guys think?
I think he didn't remember, because then he admitted to writing it, but he didn't remember why. I felt, and again, who knows, because it's this guy, but I felt that was kind of genuine. I don't think that he put together that maybe I misspelled the same city name on the envelope and that's where they're going.
Right,
like,
not that far, but even just the letter itself, with Bob, like, play dumb is probably the better option, even just with the letter.
Yeah, but I feel like he thought it was going to make him look good because he was giving her money.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't know. I didn't think that was fishy. Did you?
That last interview, I think we caught Bob in the biggest lie. And he was just deny, because he was on his toes, or on his heels, I guess. And he had to just be like, if I deny everything, I can think about my next move, Because remember, he came to Jarecki, like we just said. Jarecki didn't come to him. Jarecki waited him out, and he came. So Bob said, okay, whatever this interview is, it's probably nothing. Maybe it's little things to clear up, whatever. I can handle it. I've got my story straight. And then the variable comes out, which is the letter. And to him, I think he finally got caught in a lie that he couldn't wiggle out of right away.
Right.
And if he had had more time, if Jarecki had called him and said, "Can we interview you about this letter?" He would have thought for 3 days and said, "What's my story? How do I do?" But right there, confronted with it, the easiest thing to do is just be like, "I don't know. I didn't do it. It wasn't me." It's the easiest thing to do is deny.
Right.
Because it's plausible deniability in a certain sense, and then you can come up with a better story, like that, ridiculous Morris Black excuse. So.
Right.
Yeah, so like we said, he says, "Oh, well, I guess it's possible I could have sent her a check. Yeah, that sounds about right, And then obviously pulls out the envelope with the misspelled Beverly, and it's got Bob's return address on it and everything, and Bob reads it and comments on the misspelled address just like he did with the cadaver note. And then when they're comparing the two together, but it's so interesting because Bob's like, "Well, this is block letters. Block letters look the same no matter who writes it." I'm like, "No, they don't, first of all."
It was pretty clear. It was the same
and he
handwriting.
can't tell which one was his and which wasn't, which I personally think is very telling, because seconds before that he says, "Okay, whoever wrote the cadaver note with this envelope, that's the killer, clearly."
Yeah.
And then,
See, I thought it was a very smart choice for him not to pick which one he thought was his, because clearly they were the same. And if he would have for some reason picked the cadaver one, you know what I mean? Like, he wouldn't have been able to explain that. So for him being like, "I don't know, I can't tell, they look similar," like, that was him being prepared for, it took him from being presented with the letter to get to that point, and he got prepared to I don't know.
Yeah, that's the kind of the best option he had, was to not know instead of picking one, because picking one, could have gone right, could have gone very wrong, but saying he doesn't know still isn't good for him,
Right.
if he can't tell the difference between the two, which are both his writing, so it seems.
Right, but in the same sense, if I was to sign my signature and someone, hypothetically, was to forge my signature, and the cops asked me, or someone asked me which one is which, I mean, you know how you sign your name, but every single time you write it, it's slightly different. I think that's a hard... I don't know. Do you guys not agree? Do you think you could pick yours out always? I don't know.
I think so.
Really?
No, absolutely not. I sign my name different every time.
I sign my name differently a lot too, but a lot of things stay consistent, or I'll know, if I was in a super rush, what letters I'm going to miss and what ones I'll include. I don't know.
Crazy.
We'll have to test it out.
Yeah.
The more telling thing for me is the consistent misspelling of Beverly.
Right.
How does somebody in that economic realm, I know he's on the East Coast, but still, how does somebody in that economic realm, with that education, with that background, not know how to spell Beverly? It's clear. The chances of two different misspellings of Beverly like that that's the red flag to me. And you could never prove that, probably, because sure, a lot of people probably do misspell Beverly, but to me that's like, wait a second, dude. Now, you have to own up to that. Yeah. There's no other E.
Do you think that was maybe something, because I know you've said a little bit in the past, Bobby, that maybe he's throwing these things out to kind of intentionally get caught, perhaps. Do you think the misspelling is intentional or completely unintentional, but just he can't spell Beverly?
I think that's a great question. I think to a certain extent, maybe there's a subconscious thing going on, or like we talked about last week, it's like a game to him, and maybe this is part of the game. You know what I mean? I'm going to send a letter. I'm going to spell Beverly the same.
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe you have this old letter, maybe you don't. Oh, crap, they have it. The game changes, which is a weird thing to say. But I almost feel like there's a certain point to that where he's playing a game with these guys. Can you solve this? How many more people am I going to kill until you get me? And I don't think hopefully he's done killing, if let's not be doing this anymore. But I think it's almost a game to him. He's challenging people to catch him.
I wonder if he knows somebody named Beverly and it's spelled that way. Dun dun.
I don't know. It's I just got so creeped out for a second. It's like, we all cover so many after shows, but this is a real and you're like, this guy could kill more people. This is a
come
real.
After us.
He's not. No,
I'm just kidding.
But I mean, it's so interesting. That is actually possible. This guy's still. I mean, he's in jail now, or whatever. But he's not. Who knows? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's not a done deal.
Yeah,
it's
not a fiction. It's not fiction.
Right. Yeah, so Jarecki kind of concludes it, and I thought it was so uncomfortable after that, after he brings that out, and he's like, well, there we have it. And he's like, okay, cool, thanks, Bob, I guess we're done. And everyone's really uncomfortable. They're offering him sandwiches and stuff, in the background. They're like, hey, Bob, want one of these sandwiches? This is so great. And everyone's knows what just majorly happened, Bob goes to the bathroom, keeps with his mic on, of course, and we hear his supposed confession is what people are saying, where he's saying, oh, you're caught, like, look what you've done, essentially.
There it is, you're caught, You're right, of course, but you can't imagine, arrest him, I don't know what's in the house, oh, I want this, what a disaster, he was right, I was wrong, and the burping, I'm having difficulty with the question, what the hell did I do, killed them all, of course.
Yeah, so not completely
But
coherent.
what do you guys, what do you make of that? For me, that was talking to Jarecki, Susan, and Morris in there.
Yeah, it was almost like multiple personalities.
Yeah,
Right.
and he's
Which
done
is
that. We
bizarre.
see him go from first person to third person back and forth. But here, where he says he was right, I was wrong, that made me think of the Morris Black. Like Morris, I was wrong in fighting him, and then that's why I cut him up. I don't know what else is in the house. That's Susan's house because they clearly found the letter in the house.
Yeah.
You're right, of course, to Jarecki. To me, that's clear that there's something. His brain is not, for whatever reason, not processing the way that most people's do.
Right.
I would tend to guess.
And it's weird, like, there it is, you're caught. About himself. You're right, of course, probably Jarecki.
Yes.
But you can't imagine, maybe Jarecki again, arrest him. Like a third person. Arrest this
Right.
guy. No, dude, it's you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It's so weird.
It's totally back and forth.
And it does seem like, so, I mean, bottom line, I don't think that's all that telling, what he said in there. I think it's very suspicious, and it does raise your eyebrows and make you feel like he's confessing and stuff, but I don't feel like it's like, there it is, he confessed, at all, because he could be playing. I mean, I talk to myself sometimes. I mean, I'm not like confessing to murders or anything, but
Right.
when you're like, oh well, blah 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 blah, he can just be like role playing this back and forth.
Yeah,
with
I don't
himself.
think this would hold up in court to get this guy arrested and
No.
put in jail. I think it's very telling. I think that maybe because everyone's been talking about it before we got there, for me it was a little bit like deflated. I thought something else would happen to be bigger. But yeah, for me this right here would give him the plea of insanity more than anything else to me.
Yeah, and we did have, shout out to one of our viewers out there who commented on one of our YouTube videos saying that potentially it's a dissociative identity disorder thing, which I know we just said, sounds like he's talking to a lot of different people, but obviously we aren't experts in that, so who knows if that's really what could be going on.
He could tell Jarecki in detail exactly how he killed all three people on camera in an interview, and it will not hold up in court. His lawyers will be able to remove that.
What? For me, too, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit disappointed that it ended just like that. I wanted to see
Follow
the
up
reaction.
in some way, yeah.
I wanted to see what Jarecki and them were doing when this happened. It was like, I was like, are you serious? That's it? It's done?
Yeah.
What of them being like, shit, what do we do? We're going to call the cops. What do we do?
Right.
I wanted to see something more than just him taking a somewhat long time in the bathroom.
I know. I'm like, gosh, do we want to be hearing all this?
Yeah, it was really, I wanted something, I wanted a bow. I wanted it to be wrapped up with a little bow.
I agree, but at the same time, the ending that way is so dramatic and so chilling, and it just makes you like want to dive into like researching everything and getting obsessed with the case and all that. So I think the way that they did it leaves you like in a cliffhanger of sorts and wanting to follow up with whatever next Jarecki does related to Robert Durst if he does anything, but. Yeah, I agree. It would have been nice to have a little, some closure there instead of just like a, oh my gosh moment.
Right.
Completely. But yeah, what about Bobby? What did you think of the way they left it?
I guess I didn't mind it too much. I guess I didn't think what you were saying, but actually it's interesting to think about because the whole episode is so much about Jarecki that usually I hate it when filmmakers make films about themselves. It's the epitome of narcissistic. We don't care about you. Tell a universal story. In this case, he had to do it because he became part of the story, and I thought it was appropriate the way he did it in episode 6, especially showing his production team making calls and interview. Totally appropriate. So if you're going to do that, go all the way to the barn with it. and finish up with it. I would love to see them, their audio guy discovering this audio the next day and being like, holy crap, whatever it is, And the other part of this is just like Bob Durst getting caught in that supermarket shoplifting when he had $35,000 in his car. He's already been caught once talking on a hot mic with Jarecki. He knows. Right. And so he's doing it again. And maybe he thought he was out of range in the bathroom or something, but he knows he's mic'd up. So for him to do it again, it's maybe, to me, this reinforces my theory that's probably wrong, but it's part of the game. He's trying to get caught. He's trying to play cat and mouse with them. There's no other explanation.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was thinking that exact same thing, too. I'm like, for one, if you're going to say anything, wait until you're in your car far away from there. Don't say anything potentially incriminating anywhere where you've just been filming stuff that's being recorded.
Right, but to play devil's advocate for a minute about that, you gotta, at that point in time, in this guy's mind, he's like, holy shit, this game that I've been playing is finally coming, to an end. There's so much happening. So does he think when Jarecki walks away, maybe his mic... I feel like the mic is the last thing he's thinking about, because what the hell just happened? Yeah. He just got caught. So he's in his own mind being crazy like he is, being like, oh, of course, what did I do? What...
Where were the lawyers, too? Because back when he did the first hot mic thing, his lawyer came in and was like, hey, buddy, you're being recorded, zip it, okay? And this time, I would think, especially since he was hesitant to go back into the interview, I would think that somebody from his legal team would be there, right?
It would have been more interesting of an ending, too, if he would have just admitted it right to Jarecki. Because then what would they have done?
Then that's a bit more incriminating. Yeah, you can't take that most likely as a confession, but that's a lot more damning.
I think.
I did it.
Look at the very last thing he said. What the hell did I do? Killed them all. Of course.
Yeah.
It's talk about a downer. It's not dramatic.
So nonchalant.
Yeah,
killed
it's
them
matter
all,
of fact.
Of course. Oh, duh.
What I do, killed them all, of course.
Yeah.
It's almost like you already knew this. Now you got it. It's such a weird way for him to phrase it, and maybe it's a personality issue or whatever. But it's not dramatic. It's not stressed out. It's so matter of fact. It's wait a second. He knows that the game is up or whatever you want to call it, and he's like, well, they got me.
Yeah.
They figured it out, and you're like, okay.
It's like, damn.
Sure.
Yeah, bummer. Caught. Yeah.
I wonder how this is going to play out. I really think this guy is going to plead the insanity or something. I feel like there's...
But
go ahead.
Here's the thing about that. We know that he likes his freedom and control over his life. If he pleads insanity, he loses access to his money, his freedom, doing whatever he wants to do.
Why does he lose access to his money?
Well, ends up going into a treatment facility, so he can't he
into
doesn't
a
lose
very posh treatment facility that probably only most likely people like him can afford to go to, which is home arrest, and psychiatrists will come to his house.
No, he's probably going to be in a psychiatric hospital, not in a house arrest situation.
I feel like.
So I feel like would be his last resort, because that is giving up so much freedom and so much control over his life.
I would argue completely against that he has really nothing to live for. He doesn't have any people around him. I'm not buying the wife as a soulmate for him.
No.
He doesn't have people around him, and I think he's kind of a personality that he also doesn't want people around him. But he doesn't have family. His family's deserted him. He doesn't have the business. He's not rich. He's living off their money that they earned, and he did not. So I think he's looking at his life as an older man now, and maybe not being what's the difference if I go to jail, but really kind of being what am I living for? If I get caught, I get caught. If I don't, I don't. But what's the difference? It's not, his lifestyle's not. Yeah, he's got money, but what's he doing with it?
He's just running around with his weed and his guns everywhere.
He was living in an awful place in Galveston. It's not like he's living it up.
No,
he's he's struggling.
Right, but I would think that him being able to choose how he's living and where he's living is.
I also saw this thing. I don't know if you guys saw this. I saw this thing on the Insider last week that there was 2 other possible murders now that he might be linked to. That these kids, someone drew a sketch and it matched him,
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was. I forgot. I just saw it in passing, and I was like, I wish I would have recorded that. But yeah, something like he could possibly be linked to some other murders.
Were they people that he knew?
I don't think it just showed a picture, and it was a man and a woman, and then there was like this sketch, and then they showed a picture of him. And they showed a picture of him then in the orange suit, like in a car, kind of like talking.
It seems to me, if we assume he committed all three, which might be a safe assumption, it seems to me that he had a motive behind all three. I mean, who knows with his first wife? Who knows what the hell is going on? But it wasn't like he's killing random people or he's killing. A serial killer kind of has a need to do that in a predatory way. He did it more out of self-preservation. So he did the first murder, which may have been an accident or whatever happened. And then Susan Berman was like, I got to shut her up. And then Morris Black was like, I got to shut this guy up. And I think he would only kill people. It'd be interesting if these people had a connection to him or had something that, some dirt.
I don't know that it's been proved that it was him or whatever, but I definitely saw there was some speculation, about him being connected to some other murder.
It seems to me like it would have to be somebody who has a connection to harming him, because it doesn't seem like he's out there as a predator. He's not killing strangers. He's killing people who have something against him, or he thinks they do.
He's killing people he loves, man. Totally better than killing strangers.
Right, and and I agree with that. And I think we said a few weeks ago, this was week 3, and previous week, that one of the detectives in Galveston said, I don't think he enjoys killing. I don't think he seeks it out. I think if he gets backed in a corner, he'll do what he needs to do.
Right.
He'll kill.
As weird as this sounds, if he walks on this murder too or whatever, if they try him or whatever, I don't know that he'd ever kill again. Unless somebody else came forward who was in his circle and said, I have this evidence, and then he'd go kill him. But he's not going to walk down the street and kill a guy.
Right, because it seems like the situation has kind of been cleaned up. With Susan's death, that was kind of the last one linking.
He's a little more fragile
so we
now,
know.
too.
Yeah, that's true as well.
I think he's gonna. I don't know. I don't know why I feel this way, but I feel like he's gonna get off.
Yeah. Well,
I do not feel like he will spend his life in jail. And in Galveston, the Texas, if anything goes back there, there's death penalty there, right? For murder?
It won't, though. He's already been acquitted.
Yeah, he's been acquitted.
Done with Texas, so we're in
So where
LA
is
now.
he right now? He's in LA?
He's in New Orleans.
He's in Louisiana,
Yeah.
And
I believe his
Aren't they moving him to LA? What's the current update of his situation?
His hearing for his Louisiana charges is April 2nd, which is already happened.
Yeah.
Oops. Was April 2nd. So, oh gosh, someone look it up quick. So after the Louisiana drug and weapons possession charges were dealt with, he was going to be, I believe, moved back to LA for that all to start.
And a lot of people, I think what I want to clear up, with your guys' help, a lot of people are saying that this movie is what got him arrested. That is false, correct?
We don't know. So here's the thing.
the weapons and guns charges in Louisiana.
Well, in New Orleans, yeah. That doesn't relate to the movie, but I think that the public pressure of this sort of stuff is probably facilitating some of the interest in the case in Beverly Hills, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. It has to.
Well, so here's the thing. Because it all happened, it was timed very nicely together, obviously. The finale happened, he was arrested the next day, and so a lot of people assume that, oh my gosh, the confession in the bathroom or the letter, that's what the police needed, and they saw that and they went and arrested him. Definitely not.
No, it didn't happen.
One, after production was wrapped and before this thing went on TV, I'm sure the police knew what was in it. Mm-hmm. After Jarecki got what he needed to get, I'm sure he told them before the general public saw it. I doubt, though, that the letter and the non-confession confession is all that prompted his arrest. I mean, I would think
I have it right here.
Would have to have a ton of more solid evidence before you're going to dive in like that, especially knowing what happened back in Galveston and how he got off with a pretty much like wrapped up with a bow on it case for the other side to win, and then they lose. So I would think they'd need a lot of solid evidence before going after him again.
Well, but remember too, the interesting thing in Galveston, they had the body, but they didn't have the head, and the head was where the shot happened, so they didn't have the evidence. They didn't find it in New York.
If they did?
In New York, they don't have a body.
Right.
No body, no murder. I mean, seriously, you can declare a person dead, but you can't assume they were murdered if you don't have a body. And in LA, we don't know what they have to reprompt all this stuff when the thing's been going on.
Right.
But from what we know, from what we saw in the film, it's a lot of circumstantial evidence. I agree with you that as it stands right now, he could easily walk. You know?
Right, but and if all we saw is all they have, which I doubt, that's all they have.
Well, apparently he was. Defense attorneys are now asking judge to throw out the most recent drug and gun case against the millionaire heir. Court documents show investigators found marijuana and a revolver in Durst's New Orleans hotel room after he was arrested on murder charges last month. His attorney says the officials searched the room without a proper warrant. He was taken into custody in March, shortly after the final chapter of an HBO documentary about his life called The Jinx aired.
So
he was arrested for the murder first.
Yeah, and found with all that stuff. So, but I mean,
it says
I would think
the hearing on the drug and gun charges will continue Thursday, but there's no mention of a murder.
Yeah, they're wrapping up taking care of that minor issue in Louisiana.
Yeah, it says, this is just the tip of the iceberg for Durst. He is accused of killing his friend and author Susan Berman back in 2000. But again, that's...
Well, time for extradition.
Yeah.
They gotta have a Jinx 2.
Yeah, Jinx 2, Jarecki, let's see it.
I want to see it.
Yeah. So any other things you guys would have wanted to see from the series as a whole? Aside from maybe the closure or seeing like the reactions from the cat or the staff.
I like how the real story is paralleling this, and I think it's super interesting how we don't know what's happening because it leads us to have all these opinions. But I also think it would have been really cool to have the ending, like it end what he said to the bathroom, go to black screen, and then bring it back up and him being in court in the actual court case and see what the end was, if it was already finished, but it's not.
Yeah,
that would have been really cool just to see, like, this is what we did, and then, fade to black, come back up and see him getting acquitted or him getting off, and you're like, but how did that happen?
Yeah.
But that's just like the curiousness in me that, like, I want an answer.
Right. I wonder if Jarecki will do some sort of follow-up based on the...
I think you have to now.
Yeah.
I would definitely think so.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's, an hour special or a 2-hour special of, the case.
I almost wish that Jarecki would have included... So... In All Good Things, the fictional version of the Robert Durst story that Jarecki made, the film version, Ryan Gosling plays the Robert Durst character. And I'm so curious about, like, his kind of Gosling's perspective of what that would have been like to play him or how he would have kind of the preparation for that, just from a, acting perspective. I don't necessarily think it would have made a lot of sense in the documentary, but maybe like a 10-second clip or something of that back when Jarecki's talking about the film. But I think that could have been so interesting because, like I said, I mean, I watched it for the first time like a year ago before I had no idea it was even related to a real life situation or anything,
Right.
And then rewatched it a few weeks ago when the Jinx was all going on. And it's so much better when you watch it knowing the real life situation that inspired it. And so I'm just curious from the Gosling's perspective specifically, like playing Durst.
Gosling, if you'd like to come in, we'd love to have you. Come right, you can sit right here.
We've got a spot for you. What? You don't want to invite Gosling?
No,
over
you guys do what you do.
Come on. We love Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, so should we, anything else we want to?
Let's predict. Do you think he did it or not?
Predictions.
And now, your AFTERBUZZ TV predictions.
Alrighty. I do think he did it. And I've said that since the beginning. I do think he did all three of them. And I wouldn't be surprised, though, if his legal team gets him acquitted in some way. I'm so curious to know what the new evidence is, aside from what we saw in the show, because like I said 100 times, there's got to be more than that. So I'm very curious to see that, but I wouldn't be surprised if his legal team gets him off. But I'm hoping that isn't the case, because I feel like he did it, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Very confidently, clearly.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I know it's like, I feel like it's kind of dumb to say out loud, but I feel a little bit confused.
Hey.
I feel like he probably did it, but in his head, there's a really good justification for it, and the lawyers will play on that. I mean, I don't know. Kathy could still be alive.
Kathy comes out of hiding.
It's just so weird, because it's like that. But sometimes you have really smart people, and they say there's really smart people that have no common sense. And we see along this whole path how he's somehow made a mistake here, there, everywhere. Whether it be the bags floating up or this, that. There's mistakes always happening, and I feel like there would be something by now that would have somehow led to Kathy. Like, the fact that we have nothing, we found, and everywhere else we found something. We found multiple things, and the fact that we have nothing makes me curious.
It's so creepy. I mean, she's for sure dead, and someone killed her. I'm pretty sure. Right?
Would you bet your life on it, though?
No. Like,
There
I wouldn't
you
bet
go.
my life on the fact that there wasn't a struggle. No, I'm just kidding.
Right, I would bet
Morris.
my life on the fact that Morris Black was chopped up into pieces, but I wouldn't bet my
Right.
life on the fact that there wasn't an argument and he didn't say something to piss him off and this and that. You just don't know. And that's the thing about this that's so interesting, because even though we have so much information, there's no clarity, because he's so warped in a way.
Yeah,
Because
we
he
want
talks
the
first
truth.
person, this person, that. Right.
Yeah.
You can't handle the truth.
I know, we can't.
But yeah, I
can we?
feel a little bit all over the place still. I want to see how it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in real life.
Yeah.
I think he did it, for sure. I think he's going to be acquitted. With what we know now, if LAPD or Beverly Hills has something we haven't had made public, but knowing what we think is the evidence based on what Jarecki has told us and shown us, I don't think it's anywhere near enough, and no body, no murder in New York, so that's not going to happen. I think he'll be acquitted, and the parallels to OJ in a lot of ways are fascinating. A lot of money, good defense, reasonable doubt, public figure, whatever, rich people. It's an interesting thing. So maybe there'll be another parallel to OJ, where after you get acquitted from your major thing,
you go back to jail for a while.
Karma catches up to you. So maybe the drug and gun charges will get him. But whatever it is, I think he gets, knowing what we know now, I think he gets acquitted.
Right. But I don't think what we know now is what
It may not be. It may not be.
Oh, man.
I wonder,
so
too, I'm
much.
really curious. I wonder if in the documentary they actually found other stuff that because of laws they had to, we just believe because we watch it that way that everything that they found they showed us and that it was complete and nothing was edited. Like, he could have said 3 more sentences in the bathroom, or it's
like
it's
he reaches
unclear.
into his mic and he's like, "Did you guys get that? Haha, gotcha."
Yeah. I mean, totally. But it's possible.
Yeah.
So. I just can't wait
exactly.
to see how
Though
it all
it's
plays out.
a TV show, so we don't know what. Granted, it's a documentary, but we don't know what they edited out and what they decided to show us and decided not to. So, very intense stuff. Thank you guys out there so much for tuning in and for watching along with us these last 3 weeks. It's still going on very much in real life, so we want to know what you guys think of Robert Durst, the case, the Jinx, all of it. Tweet at us. I'm Lauren Salaun. You can find me all over the internet, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, at Lauren Salaun. And where can everybody find you guys online?
You guys can find me across all the social media platforms at IAMSTEFZ, including Periscope. I actually started.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm on Twitter at Bobby DeMuro.
Just Twitter.
I got other stuff.
Hey, it's all right.
Use
Keep it
Instagram,
simple.
whatever.
Keep it simple. Keep it short and sweet.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AFTERBUZZTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AFTERBUZZ TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the host only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.